All right, this is our last week in our world religion series. We're covering Buddhism this week. Discussion questions are fairly straightforward this week. Hopefully, we'll be able to get through all of them, and we'll wrap up the series. You're going to start with, again, a question that has been, at least in the high school group, getting a ton of traction throughout this series. Just seeing what comments or questions or clarifications they have. Again, you might not know all of the answers. You might end up getting a little off track in this question, but just see what students are curious about throughout this series. They've responded to that question with some good questions of their own, some good things that they're curious about and thinking about in each religious system. So start with that question, see where that gets you. Then you're looking for similarities between Christianity and Buddhism. So we kind of started at Catholicism as similar to Orthodox Protestant Christianity that you can get, and have moved kind of down the spectrum to Buddhism, which is about as different as you can get in all of the systems that we've covered, but there are still some real similarities to be drawn out. I've listed a couple of them there, and probably you guys and students can come up with some more based on our lesson. Then question 3 might take you a little bit of time, but I think it's a good question, and this is kind of I don't have the how would you share the gospel, or how would you get into a gospel conversation with a Buddhist question this week, but I think this is a pretty good approach, because this is the biggest maybe one of the biggest similarities and also the biggest differences between Buddhism and Christianity that I've seen studying this week. So we'll get a couple of readers and read these passages. James 1 talks about how we shouldn't say that we're tempted by God, we're tempted by our own desires. James 4 says that we fight and we quarrel with one another because we don't get what we want. We want certain things and we don't get them, and so we fight over them. And then Ecclesiastes 2 is Solomon is kind of says he's going to perform this experiment and see if he can satisfy his heart. And so he pursues all of these things with all of the means that he has as a rich king and a powerful king. And he tests his heart with pleasure, and at the end he says it's vanity, it's a striving after the wind, it's unsatisfactory, even though I gave my heart everything that it desired. And so these verses kind of agree with some ideas within Buddhism, that selfish desire is what leads to suffering. We would say selfish desire is what leads to sin. And that even if we attained all that we say that we want, even if we were able to fulfill all of our desires like Solomon does in Ecclesiastes, we would still be unsatisfied. And so Buddhism and Christianity seem to really agree on those points. But then they try to solve that problem really differently. And so that's kind of your question. Buddhists and Christians kind of agree on these points, but then we go in radically different directions. So how does Christianity solve the problem of selfish desire or deal with that problem versus how Buddhism does it? And I've got a little bit of notes there for you. Hopefully you guys can take some time to really think through that and have some good replies from students. Within Christianity, salvation is the satisfaction of our deepest ultimate desire, which is to know and love God. Within Buddhism, salvation is getting rid of all of these desires. Christianity would say our desires are disordered. So we do have selfish desire, and we want things that we shouldn't want, and we want things out of order. So we even want good things that are not bad for us to want, but we want them more than we should. We want them more than we want God. But it would firmly argue that God has given us these desires to eat and to have comfort and to have companions and to have a fulfilling job and to have rest. All of these things are desires that are actually good, that God has instilled in humanity, but because of sin, these are all out of whack, and we want to work and be fulfilled way too much, and we do that to the exclusion of rest and to the exclusion of companionship and so on and so forth. And so Christianity would say these desires are mixed up in the wrong place because of sin, but the solution is certainly not to just eliminate them all, because their desires that God has actually instilled in us, that he wants to be fulfilled, and just fulfilled properly and in the right order, which is what we look forward to one day in eternity. So that's a key question to hit on. Another big one that's, I think, helpful not only with Buddhism, but in our modern culture, something that students could come across. The Buddha taught that all of religion was based on fear. And that's something that modern philosophers will say today, that all religions are really just based on fear. And so they use that to then overthrow religion. And so how would you respond as a Christian to somebody, whether a Buddhist or an atheist, whomever, that says Christianity and all religions are really just created and based on fear? They thrive off of fear, and so that we shouldn't follow them. They're just human constructs that are a reaction to and manipulating fear. So you might have to explain that more, do some thinking through this, read through some of the notes I have for you here, do some research on your own if you want to familiarize yourself more with this idea. Essentially, the idea is that humans have always been afraid of death. They've always been afraid of what happens after death. They're always afraid of the uncertainties and the difficulties of life. And so they make up this construct of eternity and this construct of heaven to give them comfort for life after death. And they make up this divine being that can be with them and support them through difficult seasons of life. And all of these things are just built off of fear. And then Christianity actually tries to use fear to scare people into its religion by capitalizing on the fear of death and what happens after death with the idea of hell. So anyways, it all ties back to fear, and it's all kind of made up in humans' mind for all of history. That's what humans have done. So I've got a little bit of a response for you here. Let students think through this and try to respond themselves. You may think through it differently and have a different response. This is not kind of the cookie cutter, one size fits all answer, but there's something for you to work with there. And then the last question, make sure you get to this one. Spend a little bit of time here. I like to get feedback from students every once in a while. And it seems like this this series has gone really well, that they've been pretty into it and excited for it. And so ask them what some of the main takeaways they've had from this series are. What have they really pulled from it? What have they really enjoyed about it? What are they going to remember from it? Ask them, kind of just confirm that thought on my end is right, that they have really enjoyed it and this has been a fun series for them. Ask them why they think that. Why has this series been fun? Why do you think you've enjoyed this series maybe more than you've enjoyed other series in the past? Ask them if there are other systems that they wish that we would have covered. See if you can get a list of those. And then even throw out, are there other series similar to this, or just any series ideas, concepts, questions that you really want to see our student ministry cover? So that's kind of a lot of questions just thrown at students to try to get some of their thoughts and their opinions on this series and on what we do moving forward. Write that stuff down, please, and get that to me afterwards so that I can read through that and decide if there's good stuff in there that we want to grab for the future, and good feedback from them. So make sure you get to that question and just spend some time there hearing their thoughts. And thank you guys for being willing to volunteer this week. I'll see you on Sunday. Have a good weekend.